Welcome to the Virtual College Exploration for all Virginia students, sponsored by the Virginia Association of Collegiate Registrars and Administration Counselors and StriveScan. Thank you for joining us. A few housekeeping announcements before we get started. You can use the Q&A button on your screen to type the questions to our presenters at any time. Your camera and microphone are off, so the panelists cannot see or hear you. This is just one of many different sessions happening, so be sure to check out the full schedule at strivescan.com/Virginia. This presentation is being recorded and will be available within about a week at the same website, strivescan.com/Virginia. I'd now like to turn it over to our presenters.
Thank you so much, and thank you so much to the students who are right now joining this webinar. My name is Kayla St. Clair, and I serve as Senior Assistant Director of Undergraduate Admissions at Virginia Tech, and I'm going to be serving as your moderator tonight. So I have lots of colleagues from across the Commonwealth here to talk to you and really de-stress the college admissions process. So we're all going to start this session the same way. We're all going to take a deep breath, and we're going to listen to what my colleagues have to say and how we can de-stress this year and this application cycle. So I'll go ahead and pass it over to my colleague, Danette.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Danette Gomez-Bean, and I am with Virginia Tech as well. And you'll see that I get to start off the night with an overview of our wonderful place here in Blacksburg, Virginia. We're going to present a lot of information about our own schools and then some cumulative information about all of our schools. So just take a deep breath. We will unpack this for you. I promise. It's a lot of information. So again, Virginia Tech is a college town located in beautiful Blacksburg, Virginia. This QR code can get you to a virtual 360 tour if you want to spend some time there after today's panel. We have 30,000 students at the undergraduate level that are here enjoying our campus this year. It's a different campus this year, but know that our students are back at highest numbers ever. We just got retention numbers today, and we are so happy to know that all of our students are coming back stronger than ever from freshman year to sophomore year and all the way through graduation. We have 6,000 graduate students, so amongst those two groups, we have over 120 academic departments that you can choose from. We have a 2,600-acre campus, so we are the land grant, large land grant in Virginia. So we have a lot of property that spans this area. And then we also have campuses throughout the Commonwealth of Virginia as well as abroad for many of our graduate programs. You'll notice that our student and faculty ratio is actually pretty small. We are dedicated to experiential learning at Virginia Tech, which means we want you to put your hands on, minds on everything you learn. So we keep our classes pretty small so that you can get that experience and have some real meaningful learning opportunities while you're here. And we do have top ranking as a research institution in the country. A couple key things you're going to want to take away just for our process in particular, especially if you're a senior, is some deadlines. We do have some deadlines in place for you, and we're going to share those a little bit more later as we talk with the other campuses as well about their deadlines. But for us, the first one coming up is November 1st for our early decision binding deadline. The second early action is our priority deadline, December 1st. And then we have a last deadline of January 15th, which is space available. So that is quite unique to Virginia Tech that we have the rounds as they are. If I was going to recommend to you, especially as a parent, I would definitely say that early action gives you the most options. This is where you'll get an aggressive financial aid package, and you have until May 1st to deposit. So again, that priority group is really an aggressively recruited group. So these three images, real quickly, I just want to share with you that, you know, we have the Hokie bird here. We are known for our Hokie spirit as part of the Hokie Nation. So I want you to be a part of that at some point. And then we also are unique in that we do have the Corps of Cadets system. If your student's interested in that, about 10% of our students opt for that option. You can do a leadership track, or you can actually commission into the armed forces. So that is unique to Virginia Tech. And we do have the QR code here if you want to start your application. We are a Common App and Coalition school, so you can start that anytime. So hopefully that's a good little overview of who we are here in Blacksburg, Virginia at Virginia Tech. And I'm going to kick it over to my colleague, Jamie at JMU.
Thank you, Danette. Hi, everyone. My name is Jamie Didowick. I am a Senior Assistant Director with JMU's Office of Admissions. I've been here for 10 years now. I'm also a very proud JMU alumni. It was an interior design major at JMU, and I tell you that because you might be thinking, how does an art major take over an admissions position? But that's because of JMU. JMU teaches you all sorts of skills that will translate across all different majors. You could be a history major working for the government because you know how to do research, or an art major working for an admissions company. So that's a lot of different ranges you can do. JMU is so big on hands-on learning and undergraduate research opportunities. We've got about 19,500 undergraduates in a very small graduate school, and that small graduate school is intentional because we want to really focus on the undergraduate experience. So those projects and research projects that are going to graduate students normally are actually going to the undergraduates here. We have a cadaver lab on campus for our undergrads. You will not find me there, but I want to share that as another unique opportunity that we have on campus. 16:1 student to faculty ratio, average class size of 27. We've got some great statistics you can see on our slide. Two things I want to highlight real quick: to sign up for our mailing list if you'd like, j.mu/info. And then at the bottom where it says find your counselor, we are divided geographically by region all over the world. So those of you watching are mainly from Virginia, so you can find who your admissions counselor is by high school. And we love for us to reach out to you and mail that connection. I want to talk about a couple of quick traditions that I love at JMU. One is at football games. You can see it in the pictures. We throw purple and gold streamers whenever we score a field goal or a touchdown. It is so much fun. Those streamers are now showing up at weddings and graduation ceremonies and things. And another one that's really special is called Duke's Hold Doors. And it's been going on since before I was a student. And our students, faculty, staff, everyone on campus holds a door for you. And it's a neat way to say, I see you, I value you, you're important to me. You could make some kind of cute reference how JMU opens the door for your future. And yes, we definitely do. But it's just another way to say this campus is so friendly, so school spirited, and so nurturing, and it's got a really special environment. So hopefully you'll get a chance to come see it for yourself. All right, I will pass it over to, I believe it's Caroline.
Thank you, Jamie. I'm happy to be here today talking to you all, and I'm so excited to talk about William & Mary. My name is Caroline Ward. I'm an Assistant Dean with the Office of Undergraduate Admission at William & Mary. And with William & Mary, we are located in Williamsburg, Virginia, which is right next to where our campus is, right next to Colonial Williamsburg. We're 10 minutes from Busch Gardens, which is our Europe-themed amusement park. We're an hour from Richmond, Virginia. We're an hour to an hour and a half from Virginia Beach. And then we're also 2.5 hours from Washington, D.C. We do have a Study in D.C. program to offer to our students. This is where you can study in Washington, D.C., take William & Mary courses, get credit, and then if you choose the summer or semester long-term we offer, then you also intern in the city as well. So you have an internship and credit through this program. But bringing back to William & Mary's campus in Williamsburg, we have a little over 6,300 undergraduate students. So we're a medium-sized school. We're kind of a small liberal arts and science college while also being a big research university. About 80% of our undergraduates conduct research with a faculty member by the time they graduate, and a quarter of that 80% are published. So you can certainly be a published researcher by the time you graduate William & Mary, and research can be in the sciences, it can be in the humanities, the arts, whatever area you're interested in research, you can certainly pursue it here at William & Mary. We also have a fantastic Charles Center where students can go to and look into different research topics or paths to research, and also scholarship for research. You can certainly have your research fully funded. So if you travel abroad, if you do it out of state, if you decide to pursue research on campus during a break, you can have that all funded. And then we are also very strong in study abroad. I know it looks a little different this year, but we have about 55% of our student population that studies abroad. I studied abroad twice in my undergraduate career. I absolutely loved it, so I always love talking about study abroad when I have the chance. William & Mary students can study abroad during the summer, semester, spring or winter breaks, or even year-long term. We also offer a very unique joint degree program with the University of St. Andrews, where you would spend 2 years in Williamsburg, Virginia at William Mary and 2 years in Scotland at the University of St. Andrews. So pretty exciting program, and feel free to reach out to me at any time because I am the dean in charge of reviewing for that program. So I always love talking about it. Now, all students come in undeclared at William & Mary, so you actually don't declare a major till around second semester of sophomore year. So you have 2 years to take a variety of different classes and then figure out what major or majors you want to pursue from there, and you declare them with your advisor. In terms of campus life at William & Mary, we have nearly 500 clubs and organizations. That's quite a lot considering our student body size. Some clubs I always like to mention include our cheese club, our salsa dancing club, our salsa club, our guacamole club, a lot of food. And then we also have, 45 club sports. We have 16 varsity sports teams. We are a Division I school. And I mean, just a long, long list of clubs and organizations that students can choose from. In terms of applying to William & Mary, you can apply to William & Mary through the Common Application or the Coalition application. We have 3 different decision deadlines. We have Early Decision 1 due November 1st, Early Decision 2 due January 1st, and Regular Decision due January 1st. Early Decision 1 and Early Decision 2 are binding, so if you apply to William & Mary ED1 or ED2 and you get into William & Mary, you do have to come to William & Mary, which is exciting. It's not scary, it's exciting, but we understand when students do have to apply Regular Decision, which is our non-binding option. So with Regular Decision, you can apply to a bunch of different schools, find out your decisions, and make your choice from there. So that's a just brief glimpse of William & Mary, and I'm happy to talk about more, but I want to pass it on to my colleague Tom at UVA.
Thank you so much, Caroline. And thank you all for coming out and joining us tonight. I'm really excited to be with you all, and more importantly, I'm really excited to be here with such wonderful colleagues. I think one of the best things about being able to talk to you about some of the stressful things about the college admission process and hopefully making them less stressful is that as a group, I think you would be really lucky and in good hands to end up at any of our schools. And so hopefully that in and of itself takes some of the stress away. I'm going to talk a little bit about UVA before we jump into the rest of our presentation. We are the University of Virginia. We're located in Charlottesville, Virginia, which is about 2 hours south of the Washington, D.C. area, about an hour to the west of the city of Richmond. We are just about smack dab in between the rest of the schools that you're hearing about tonight and about smack dab in the middle of the Commonwealth. So hopefully we're not too far from wherever you are tuning in from here today. In terms of size, we have about 16,000 undergraduates. So again, sort of in the middle of everyone you're hearing about. As you can see on the slide up in front of you, we like to say that we offer the best of both worlds in offering a lot of different options for you, a lot of specific courses of study, but in still offering that really intimate, close-knit academic environment. I think one thing that I think is really important to know about UVA when you're considering us and whether or not we're going to be the right fit for you is that UVA was really founded on this idea of learning being a lifelong endeavor. It was one of the first universities to be founded around a library as opposed to a religious institution as sort of the center of campus. And the original campus space was designed so that faculty members and students were living alongside one another, so that learning was something that wasn't confined to the classroom, but was something that was actively trickling over into everyday life. And while UVA was founded over 200 years ago, that really impacts the conversations that are happening here on campus today. So we are really big on something that we call student self-governance, which is just a really fancy way of saying that students really participate in making decisions about the university at every level. So there's a student that sits on the board of visitors. When we are able to be giving live tours in person, again, the guides that will give your tours are totally student self-run. They're known as the University Guide Service, and they're an entirely independent organization from the admissions office. And the nearly 1,000 different clubs and organizations here at UVA are all totally student self-run as well. So one of the really wonderful things about that, I think, is that while we are an institution that has been around for a long time, we're over 200 years old, we are always changing, and that's because our students are really driving that change. I think UVA is a place that if you want to see something happen, it's something that you can do as a student. And I think that's really perfectly embodied by one of my favorite organizations, which is called Hack Charlottesville. And this is an organization created by students where students present and teach one another skills that they think others might want to learn. So whether that's coding skills or business skills or research methods, students are designing courses that they think are important for their peers to learn about and going in and learning those skills from one another. And I think that really sort of perfectly embodies the UVA experience. But you can see some of the other information about the University of Virginia, some basic numbers. I'm going to hold off on talking more about our admission process until we get later in the session, just because we're going to be covering a lot of the things you might want to know as a group about applying to college in general, and that will all be pertinent to us as well. So with that all being said, I'm going to move it on. And we are going to take you through as a group of schools over some of the things that commonly cause folks stress in the admissions process and really break them down and hopefully make them easier to navigate for you all.
So this slide is a lot. So again, this is a great time to take a deep breath. Because we're going to be sharing some information that you may or may not know about our institutions, but things that we share alike and that we differ. And so you'll see in this chart things that we all participated in putting this slide together to be able to show you the differences. But I want to talk specifically about your school and your school's context when we're looking at all of the things that we're asking for here. So my part of the presentation is to unpack for you school context. So you all are in public schools, private schools, homeschooled, international schools, boarding schools, all types of high schools. And I want to make sure that you understand that at UVA, Virginia Tech, William & Mary, and James Madison University, we are trained to see you within that context. We understand that the spring and this fall are very different than any other years past from your peers that maybe came to our institutions before. So know that we're going to take that into consideration. We don't want to penalize you for the pivot that your schools made, whether that was a really smooth pivot or a really choppy pivot. We will take that into consideration. So I'm going to really quickly just run a couple things through this, and then I'm going to pass it on to my colleagues to talk about a couple of other things. But we have test optional, early decision, early action, our recommendation letters, transcripts for the application, essays, scholarship application, financial aid application, and demonstrated interest. So we're going to talk about what these mean. I'm going to ask Caroline to share some things that we wanted to share with you about extracurricular activities and how those are going to be shown this year. But again, I want to make sure you know to just take a deep breath and understand that we will take your year this year in context. So Caroline.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm happy to talk about extracurriculars, letters of recommendation, and essays. So with extracurricular activities, like Danette mentioned, we will be taking everything into account that's been happening. You know, we look at the school report, we communicate with your counselors, we communicate with you, and we understand how the spring and this fall and the summer and everything to come might affect all that you've included in your application, including your extracurricular activities. So I have certainly come across students who say, you know, I could not play sports, you know, mid last spring and I can't play them this fall, or my clubs have been totally changed to virtual setting and it's been difficult to meet, and how do I include that in my application? We completely understand, and whatever information you can provide is helpful for us. So certainly in your application, those extracurriculars, while we normally say, you know, include those extracurriculars you're part of, you know, all 4 years in high school, or 3 to 4 years in high school, and that you dedicate a lot of time to, we understand that may look different this upcoming year, and we certainly will understand the context. And then the other parts I mentioned, which include the recommendation letters. The recommendation letters, you know, they do differ from school to school, as you can see on the graphic. So some schools require them, some schools don't. I know for William Mary, which I'll use as an example, we do require the counselor letter of recommendation, and then we also recommend an additional 1 to 2 others. So in total, about 2 to 3 letters of recommendation. It gives us a general view of who you are by others, and usually you want to pick people who know you well, who can attest to who you are and who you are as a student as well. They can certainly be community members, but many choose teachers that maybe they've had more than once. But again, you always want to check with your school, the schools that you're applying to, about what is required and those letters of recommendation. Now, in terms of letters of recommendation, we understand when students ask, you know, should I submit more this season because, you know, some more schools are going test optional or they're not requiring as much. Should I submit more recommendation letters? It's up to you and that school, and I would definitely ask your regional dean or regional counselor and find out what they'd like to see in your application. And then the essay component that I mentioned earlier, there is going to be that required essay in the application, and then there also might be an additional supplemental essay or a short answer component in the application. You want to make sure to look on that graphic and see, you know, whether it's a Y or an N, yes or no, in terms of essays. But we certainly understand you'll be doing a lot of writing for the application component for the essay component in the application. And I'll use William Mary as another example where we do have that required essay, but we also have an additional optional essay that, while not required, we do recommend because it gives us more information about you. It allows us another opportunity to know who you are and allows you another chance to share a story with us or information that you want us to know about. So definitely feel free to check with that school, you know, look at that graphic, see which schools require that essay component or short answer component, because you definitely want to know what else you can provide. But the essays certainly give us that in-depth look at the personal component of the application. So definitely encourage that to be submitted. And feel free to reach out again to your regional counselor or regional dean and ask them, you know, stories or what they recommend in terms of essay topic. We know that many essay topics will likely pertain to the pandemic that's happening, how it maybe affected you, how it affected your school, and that's okay. You can certainly talk about that. You can try to make us cry, try to make us laugh, try to make us feel something when reading your essay. We always like to say that, try to make us feel when reading your essay. And we know that's a big deal, right? That's a big task, but feel free again to talk to your regional counselor or regional dean. And you know, I have plenty of essay stories to share, as I'm sure many of my colleagues do. So best to reach out on those, but we do like to see those components of the application. Thank you.
All right, well, let's talk test scores, everyone. This was a point of stressor before the pandemic, right? So let's try to talk about through what test optional means. So when I talk about tests, I'm specifically referring to the SAT and the ACT tests. Those are, they have some similarities, they have some differences. The ACT has some science questions. The SAT is a 2 or 3 part. Some schools accept the writing, some don't. But as a whole, most of you, especially juniors and seniors this year, have not even had the opportunity to sit for the SAT or the ACT. Testing may have been canceled, not available or limited where you weren't able to grab a spot, or you may have only taken it once, and historically college applicants like to take it maybe more than once. Take it that first go round, get your feet wet, take it again. So all of my colleagues and I this year have started to go test optional, and I'm going to actually suggest that verbiage almost should be testing not required. Because a lot of times when schools say optional, it's like optional, but maybe it's a good idea to send it for this year. All 4 of us don't need your test scores. Trust us. It's okay to not send them, because truly, we know that it's almost impossible to take these tests at this point in this year. So the College Board, who runs the SAT, and our national kind of governing bodies called NACAC and beyond, have urged colleges across the country to no longer require test scores for this year only. We'll see what next year brings. We'll cross that bridge. But it's a way to say, you know, this is not going to be an important part of your application. So a lot of colleges are not needing them, or some, if they still need their tests, may be more flexible on their deadlines to receive your test scores. But for all of us this year, we do not need those test scores. And I will tell you this, JMU has actually been test optional for 3 years now. And I can tell you with full confidence that it almost makes our lives easier, because we put so much more emphasis anyway on your transcript, the classes that you took, your grades, activities, things like that, where your test scores were not a major factor. Because if you think about it this way, I say this a lot, it's 4 hours versus 4 years. 4 hours one time on a Saturday morning where you took the SAT or the ACT versus 4 years of time spent studying and working on your classes. So that's why, especially this year, one less thing to stress about is the test scores. All right, I'll turn it over to Tom now to take us home.
Great. Thank you so much, Jamie. And I think, as you all are hearing from my wonderful colleagues, you know, there are a lot of different things that go into this review process. And as you can see on the slide in front of you, we don't all necessarily look at exactly the same things. All of our review processes are a little bit different. But by and large, we're more similar than we are different in terms of trying to get to understand where you're coming from. And trying to get to know you as a person. We're in the business of admitting people and not numbers. So I think to that end, one of the questions that we get a lot, all 4 of us get a lot when we're on the road together in a year where there isn't a pandemic. We might be all together in a high school cafeteria somewhere with large lines of students and families waiting to talk to us. And by far and away, one of the most popular questions that we get are questions about students who are worried about being compared to their classmates. And this happens no matter where we are in the state. It happens in Central Virginia, where we are here at UVA. It happens in Northern Virginia. It happens in Southwest Virginia. It happens on the Eastern Shore. We get questions who are worried that because where they're applying from, they'll be at a disadvantage, either because there are a lot of students applying from their high school to our different schools, or because there aren't very many students applying from their schools. And so they're worried about us not really knowing them, or being at a disadvantage versus students who are applying from schools where maybe we get a lot of applicants. And so something that I really want to talk about is this idea that we're looking to take so many or so few students from any given school. I think that is a common myth, that we have a target number of students from a given high school that we're trying to accept. And that idea really just isn't true. We are all for public universities, and we have formal relationships with the Commonwealth of Virginia. And so we do have one quota in our admission process. And so we are committed to taking a certain number of our incoming class, has to be Virginia residents. And that's a little bit different for each of our schools because we all have slightly different relationships with the Commonwealth of Virginia. But by and large, that's a really good thing for all of you who are Virginians who are joining us here today, because we're going to be taking most of our class as Virginians. But beyond that, there's no number of students that I have to take from any given high school. If I see students who are doing the things that we want to see in our admissions process, there's not necessarily a cutoff for that. If there are 2 students that look very similar, they've taken the same classes, they're doing really well in those courses, they're writing us good essays, I don't have to just admit the one who looks slightly better, right? We're looking to see that you're doing the things that we want to see, but you're not necessarily directly competing with one another. So I really want to break that down. That's something I think that stresses a lot of people out. But hopefully it's something that you don't need to be stressed out about anymore. The other thing that I want to touch on while I'm talking about this topic is I think, you know, where that question often stems from is students want to know how they can set themselves apart in the admissions process. They want to know what makes them stand out to us. And so I think a lot of students feel like that We need to know who they are when we're reading their application. We need to remember their name. We need to see their face. We need to know that they want to come to our school to be accepted. And this is sort of an idea that's known in college admissions as demonstrated interest. And there are certainly a lot of schools that take this into account in their admissions review process. So it's certainly something that you should talk to the different schools that you're considering when you're looking at what they look at in their admission review process. For us here, several of us have an early decision deadline, which it's a binding admission program. And this is basically a way of saying, if I apply early decision to your school, I will come here no matter what. This is my top choice. And so as you can see on the slide, for those of us that have early decision, that is going to be a way that we use demonstrated interest. So, for all of us, we want to admit qualified students who are going to come and make our campuses better and use their experience at our campuses to make the world better. But we also want to have happy students. We want students that want to come here. And so early decision is one of the ways that we can factor that in. As you can see also on the slide though, most of us don't really look at demonstrated interest otherwise, so you don't need to bend over backwards. And for schools that do use demonstrated interest, they can do it in several different ways. So for example, our colleagues at William & Mary have a really wonderful interview process where you can actually sit down and be able to share a little bit about yourself, and they can get to know you better and know you're fit for the school a lot better. And I'll let my colleague Caroline talk about that just a little bit more. Beyond that, there's nothing that you need to do. You don't need to send us anything to be reviewed for admission. One student one year sent us a 10-foot poster of their face. That was not something that we could use in our admission review process. They were not accepted, unfortunately. So don't feel like you need to do any of that to be accepted. Just sort of know to ask when you're looking at schools, do they use demonstrated interest? And if so, what ways they take that into account. And I'll turn it over to Caroline to just speak a little bit about the ways that William & Mary uses demonstrated interest.
Sure, absolutely. So we take demonstrated interest into account for all different early decision to regular decision. It actually, for us, comes into play most in regular decision because that's our most competitive pool, and we want to know that you are interested in William & Mary absolutely even further than just applying. With regular decision and all the decisions really, when we take demonstrated interest into account, this might include having a visit to William & Mary, and this could include a virtual visit. We offer a lot of virtual visit opportunities. This includes, like Tom mentioned, the interview option where you can interview with a William & Mary senior. Those notes are added to your application. This could involve attending one of our virtual panels. So we have student panels, we have STEM panels. We also have fall focus events, our virtual class visit options, which is called our prospective student lecture series. When you attend those virtual events, you're in our system as a student, showing that extra interest. Another way to show demonstrated interest is to reach out to your regional dean, regional counselor. Those deans and counselors can keep track of your communication and know that, oh, this student's reached out consistently to me and they're very interested. So that's another way to show demonstrated interest for sure. And we certainly do take that into account because we understand in our process when we just need that other element to look at. And I know, as Tom mentioned, there are some things students can send their regional dean or counselor that may help their application or may not. And we certainly, if you're interested in sending something to your regional dean, you can certainly do so. We've received, art projects, sports memorabilia, scrapbooks, scavenger hunts, food, which we do have to throw out. We unfortunately can't eat it, but we've received, everything you can think of. So we have received some different things too. I'll warn you all now and give you a tip. Don't send a doll's leg in a box saying, I hope this gets my leg in the door. That is unoriginal now and a little creepy. So try not to send that to your regional dean. But we've received a bunch of stuff and we certainly can take it into consideration for your application as we do review it holistically and take everything into consideration. But that's basically the gist of demonstrated interest for William & Mary is kind of looking at the different ways you've shown that interest.
All right. Now, is there anything that folks would like to follow up on right now? Is there anything that we missed before we want to jump into the questions?
I did forget to mention our deadlines. Thanks, Kayla. If you don't mind, I'll jump in real quick because JMU, we did extend our early action, non-binding, and regular decision deadlines this year by 2 weeks. This is temporary for this year. Who knows what next year will bring. But our new early action decision deadline is November 15th, and our new regular decision deadline is February 1st.
Great. Thank you so much, Jamie, for adding that. If you see someone pop through my virtual background, that is my dog wanting her dinner. She is not used to having to wait. So everyone say hi to Dr. Lexi Gray here. We're going to go ahead and open it up to questions. So students, please make sure that you're asking questions in the chat, and we will field them out to our panelists. So one that I see here, we have someone asking if for both UVA and William & Mary, scholarship application is a no. Could you please explain that a little bit more?
Sure. Yes. So the scholarship application is a no because for William & Mary, we automatically consider all those that apply for merit scholarship. Now, for financial aid, that's a different matter, and that's when you have to complete FAFSA, CSS profile as well if your school requires it. But in terms of just merit scholarship, at William & Mary, you are automatically considered when you apply. There is no extra application to be considered for any William & Mary merit scholarships. But Tom, would you like to discuss UVA's?
And my answer is going to be very similar to Caroline's. Our office actually isn't in charge of administering any merit scholarships. So the way that those sort of work at UVA is there are various organizations around UVA that have endowed money to support students based on different criteria. And any student who applies to UVA and is admitted then is eligible for those. So they'll go through the students that we admit and find the ones that meet their criteria. We don't have any merit scholarships that are based on testing or academic thresholds. You don't have to worry about that if you're going to be applying test optional. But the vast majority of our money is going to be in that need-based financial aid. I would definitely recommend, if you're looking at ways to finance your UVA education, checking out our net price calculator, because that's going to give you a really strong sense of what sort of need-based scholarships you're going to be eligible for here.
Thank you so much for that, Tom and Caroline. We have a question here. Does it harm your chances to get in if you apply for regular decision versus early action? Danette, would you like to take that question?
Sure, and I'll speak only in the context of Virginia Tech. So yes, regular decision, unfortunately, is only if there's space available. And again, I can't predict like what majors are going to be the most popular this year. So my recommendation to families is to try to make that December 1st priority deadline. It's in your best interest. You have the best opportunity to get in from our bigger pool. So please try to do that priority December 1st deadline. Again, we have an early decision deadline of November 1st, and those are just for students who know that Virginia Tech's their top choice. And I do encourage you to only choose one school as an early decision school. But for us, Virginia Tech specifically, regular decision is space available only.
And is there another school that would like to follow up on that, on what your early action versus regular decision looks like?
It might be best for us to just go round robin and talk about this quickly. For us, there's no difference in how we review applications from pool to pool. So we have early decision, which is binding. We have early action, which is not binding, and we have regular decision. The only difference between those, other than deadlines, so our early action and early decision deadlines are both November 1st. Our regular decision deadline is January 1st. The only difference between those is if you apply early, we won't have your senior fall grades because they won't be out yet. So if you think it's really important for us to know how you're doing in that senior year, you might actually want to wait for us and apply regular. But in terms of acceptance rates or how we review your application, there's enough overlap in our application pools that we're able to really get a sense of what our whole application pool is before we go out with admission offers. So you don't need to worry about being left out if you end up waiting and applying regular decision for us.
Same for JMU, no distinction between early action versus regular decision.
All right, now I have a few questions here about SATs, and I know we addressed this a little bit, but I want to make sure that we can maybe elaborate even further for some students. So we have one question saying, will giving tests like the SAT, will it increase our chances to get into a college? Is it better to turn in a lower than average SAT score or just not turn it in at all? What about, since they're less important this year, what are we focusing on instead? Jamie, can you start with that, especially with, I know you mentioned JMU has been test optional for a few years now, and talk about that.
Yeah, thanks, Kayla. Yes. And so what we have found even before JMU was test optional is we rarely use the SAT as the defining factor, and when I say test, SAT or ACT, we look at them equally as the defining factor of admission. I've seen the biggest range in a student who was a full IB diploma completer with straight A's with a very low ACT. And then I have seen students with a 1600 with C's and D's on their transcript. And so when we see things like that, we really do say that SAT and ACT was a moment in time, and it's not a predictor of success at JMU. So I can say confidently for this year, and probably for most of our colleagues, that this year we are not going to use the test scores. So I will be very honest, there's no point in sending them this year. I would not worry about it. There may be one exception for athletics. For the NCAA, they may require the test scores, but they're also becoming a little more lenient this year. So talk to your coach if that's the boat that you find yourself in. But for the most part, we do not need those. We don't need them for the honors college. We don't need them for scholarships. So one less thing truly to worry about this year. And it's truly based on the fact that testing has been so hard to come by for our students, and this is becoming a national trend this year, where colleges are really doing our best to say, okay, we're not going to think about this, so we're going to look at the rest of the parts of the application, the extracurriculars, the transcript, letters of rec, essays, things like that. I mentioned something else I forgot to say earlier, is the coalition application, the common application, and a lot of our university-specific applications have a new supplemental space where you can talk about how or if COVID-19 affected you, so that you don't have to take away from something else you might have wanted to talk about. And I also want to mention too, we know it has affected every single person, everyone watching tonight and beyond. And so don't feel like you need to write something if you feel okay. But that we wanted as colleges to give you a space to share that information. But I'll let my colleagues kind of jump on this, because for us, don't worry about tests.
You can go ahead. Tom, did you want to add something to that?
After you, Carol.
Oh, I was just gonna say, this is our first year, William Mary's first year going test optional. And we have a 3-year test optional pilot where we are test optional the next 3 years. And with this, we've been telling people, if you do take the SAT or ACT and you feel you have a very strong score and it reflects strongly on you, please feel free to submit. If you do have the chance to take it and it's not a great score and it doesn't reflect well on you or your studies, feel free not to submit. We don't want that to hurt your application. And then if you don't have a chance to take the SAT or ACT because you can't make it to a testing center, it keeps getting canceled, anything like that, no worries. It does not negatively impact your application if you don't submit a test score. And I think that's, like Jamie said, it's that big message we want to get across everywhere is if you don't submit a score, it doesn't hurt your application. And to keep in mind, if you do take it and you have a strong score and you want to include that, then feel free and include it. You just want to make sure it is a good reflection on you and your application.
Thank you for that. We are winding down on time, so I want to let our panelists answer one last question, and I think it's a question that is pretty important, and one that I think sheds light into the fact that we are looking at you as people and not just as students during this process. So could each of you share with students what the most memorable essay you've read is? And we can start with whoever wants to jump in first. I know that I've had an essay before where a student, they wanted their superpower to be the ability to make couches appear out of nowhere to help create community with one another. And I thought that was just really creative and said a lot about that student of, you know, they're looking for that sense of connection and belonging. So that's been one of my favorite ones to read over the years.
I love that. Mine is short and sweet. All it said was James Madison is the school for me.
One of our essay prompts is what's your favorite word and why? And I had a student write about oops because they were very clumsy, and I got a beautiful sense of who that student was.
Gosh, I would have to say the essays that in our optional essay, students can include their experience visiting William Mary, any type of William Mary reference, and I always love those. And I tend to learn something new every time I read those, whether they discovered a new spot on campus or a memory of when they visited campus when they were 8 years old, or Colonial Williamsburg. I mean, those are just super, super fun to read.
All right, well, thank you for joining us. When you close this window, there will be a link to a very quick 4-question survey. We'd appreciate any feedback you can provide. Also, this was just one of many sessions being hosted, so be sure to sign up for additional sessions at strivescan.com/Virginia. In about a week, you'll be able to find this session recording, as well as all the other session recordings at strivescan.com/Virginia. Thank you, panelists. Goodbye.